Let's welcome in a venture capitalist who is invested in Airbnb. Rick Heitzmann of FirstMark joins us from New York City. Rick, welcome. It's good to have you on.
Hey, Scott. Good to see you again.
Direct listings the way to go?
I think it's more and more so becoming the way to go as companies are more profitable and they have a greater path to profitability in the current world. And the discount that companies have taken on the IPO is just too much. So banker fees aside, I think that discount's better off in the employees and founders and shareholders' hands.
Would you advise Airbnb, which you are an investor in, and Deirdre was just speaking about it, would you advise them to do a direct listing instead of an IPO?
I think there's still an active conversation there, but Airbnb has a lot of the criteria that you look for in a direct listing. It has a great brand, so people know about the company. It's profitable, so it doesn't need the capital, and there's no financing risk. It's a big enough company that it will be able to draw research coverage regardless. And there's been enough float and enough secondary trading, so there's a price discovery out there. So you have a pretty good sense of what the company's value is going to be when it starts its potential direct listing.
You think we'd even be having this conversation if we hadn't had some of the high-profile blow-ups of late?
I think we would. The conversation probably started over a year ago. Spotify and Barry McCarthy, especially their CFO, has been a real leader in discussing this change. And then Slack continued the conversation. And I think a lot of companies that have gone public in the last 12 months have taken it seriously. But I now see there's a groundswell among founders, investors, and even employees who would benefit from this.
Part of this, Deirdre, is, on Bill Gurley's part, I guess, is to try and just, blow up the status quo. Tired of seeing things done the way they've been done and wanting to do something about it. And he has the capital, political, if you will, in the Valley and obviously financially to make a difference.
I think it's about two major things. I mentioned it, leverage and flexibility. I think he's trying to tell startups that you have more of a voice in this. You don't need to do what the investment bankers take the traditional route that has been done for many, many years. And I really think the turning point this year has been Slack. If it was just Spotify that had done it, it might have been a one-off. But the fact that Slack did it, and I would argue successfully, yes, when you take a look at the share price up on the screen right now, it has tumbled since that direct listing. However, remember that its valuation right now is billions. It's $12.5 billion. Its last private market valuation was $7 billion. So, you look at this, and it has been a really effective way to let their employees and early investors cash out while getting them public and saving on a lot of those fees.
Yeah. Rick, you want to opine on what Deirdre said?
I think it's probably less about fees and more the discount and missing that pop. As you had Bill talk about in the previous segment, it's billions of dollars this year alone. And that's money out of the founders' pockets, employees' pockets, and other existing investors. And there's just better ways for price discovery rather than just doing it by hand manually with the elite underwriters.
The other interesting point is that, Gurley was obviously highly critical of Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley, specifically in the interview that we did out in San Francisco. Now I've learned that Goldman is having a conference on Wednesday in Las Vegas around innovative private companies and heavy on the docket and the agenda there, direct listings versus IPOs. So Goldman and these others are being forced to deal with this issue because it's hitting them head on.
It is, and Goldman conference happens every year, so it's already set in stone. But I think folks are trying to, they see the groundswell and they're trying to justify what's actually going on. Part of the issue in direct listings is oftentimes when a company or an entrepreneur goes public, that's their one time interfacing with an investment bank. So the other customer the bank would have would be the institutional investors on the other side, which see the same underwriters almost weekly during IPO seasons. So who is the recurring customer in that structure is the other kind of interesting dynamic to watch in the business.
Hi, Rick. It's Joe. So I guess the other angle on this would be maturity. And if I think about Airbnb, I think about a company that's been around, if I'm not mistaken, at least about 10 years. The direct listing, doesn't that give an Airbnb and really a lost opportunity for Uber to kind of avoid opening some of the cultural challenges that if they have the traditional roadshow, they have to go out and they have to reveal? Airbnb has regulatory battles that if they go direct listing, they really don't have to get involved in that once again. I think Uber made that same mistake where they had to rehash history.
Well, I think you have to go through the same S1 process. So there's the same level of disclosures, the same level of disclosure of risk factors. You don't have to maybe face the institutional investors head-to-head to address any concerns they might have. But I always think companies are better off addressing risk factors, addressing issues which might be out there. And so I think Airbnb could avoid that with maybe large institutional investors, but many of those folks are going to sit down with regardless. And the key risk factors as part of your S1 is something you should address head on.
Lastly, Rick, before we go, should Airbnb have already gone public? They wait too long?
I don't think they waited too long. I think that business is so strong. They have increasing moats in their marketplace. And I think you'll probably see a public financing of some sort from them in the next 6 to 12 months. So I think they'll be right on schedule.
All right. We appreciate your time. Look forward to talking to you again. That's Rick Heitzmann, Deirdre
Thanks,
Bosa
guys. Appreciate
joining
it.
us as well. Appreciate it from you.